Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Laura Ciceri.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. My name is Laura Ciceri. I'm the founder of Supply Chain Insights, and I interview supply chain leaders around the world to understand what's happening and to gain insights. Today, I'm joined by Mack McGary, who may not be a stranger for a number of listeners. He's been in the supply chain space for a long time. But Mack has joined Logility, and I wanted to get his insights on driving change and using new forms of analytics. Welcome to the show. Tell people a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Laura. Delighted to be interviewed today. I'm a supply chain guy since college, working for some of the early supply chain companies, including i2 Technologies. And more recently, Laura, I was at GT Nexus for 7 years. When they were a small company, became a big company and eventually acquired by Infor. And then after that, I decided to do something that I often call a sabbatical, which was I spent 18 months in the blockchain movement exploring technologies. But I joined Logility about 18 months ago, and I'm delighted to be here.
Well, Logility's been around since 1980, American Software. Then it went to client server with the name of Logility, and it's done a number of acquisitions. Optient, which is a great inventory optimization software, and Halo, which had a lot of data analytics. Tell me a little bit about driving the vision and the mission of the company and basically melding these technologies together to help business leaders have better answers.
Well, about 2 years ago, Logility was on my investigative list, and I'm thinking about what's next for me. And when I met the leadership team, I was convinced that they were moving towards a common platform that was in line with my expectations for the market. And that is to leverage data inside and outside the enterprise and move to a continuous planning environment, both long-term horizon as well as immediate. What happened today, taking action and making decisions, and then finding out how that decision performed against expectation, and then using machine learning to evolve and improve your processes over time and increasing the automation. And they were 3 years or more into their vision, and I thought over time we would achieve it. So I was very optimistic in the future, and therefore I joined them. And I came in, as an agent of change. I think that was recognized that we needed to change our sales organization and to move from on-premise to cloud, to increase the size of the engagement and to engage differently with an agile methodology and leading with the outcomes in mind, but using analytics and data to solve for those decisions that are made on a more rapid basis than kind of a historical on-premise applications were designed for.
Well, Mack, when you think about supply chain planning, you and I are kind of old dogs. I'm probably an older dog than you are, but we've been around the block a couple of times. And new forms of analytics I find to be terribly exciting. But one of the things that I struggle with is, data scientists who don't know as much about supply chain as I wish they did, think they have all the answers and it's easy. And the traditionalists are like, why do we need to change what we've got today? And the business leaders are sitting there going, help me to do this better. How are you leading? I mean, do you see the world the same way? And how are you leading your organization through that?
Well, I think we have to marry the traditionalists with the avant-garde and using agile methodologies, looking at new data sources to solve new problems. So I think, many global enterprises want to solve for how do I get to a continuous planning environment, move away from silos into what's good for the enterprise, and then combine data and processes in new and different ways. But they want to start where they are today, get spreadsheets and manual processes off with, different maturity models out there. Laura, it still surprises me. So many years we've been sort of pitching the same vision of a nervous system and being able to react globally to events that take place and make quick decisions based on what happened this morning. But the fact is most companies still operate in kind of a synchronous, a siloed environment with a lot of reliance on tribal knowledge and data within different silos. But I think even though they're the aspirational and the early adopters want to get to a cognitive supply chain and automate more of the processes, the magic for us and our clients is to be able to focus on some short-term deliverables to deliver value, but build towards that future goal of becoming a data-driven, demand-driven enterprise that looks at the total network and tries to optimize not just within your four walls, but across the network.
Your clients, you've got how many clients at Logility? A lot.
We're publicly traded, and we're proud of our 1,000 plus customers.
Okay, so your 1,000 plus customers that have implemented over many years the solution, and user satisfaction with Logility is high. They're a little fearful of new technologies, excited but fearful. What's your advice for them?
Well, it is a brave new world, and there is the hype cycle out there, and there's a lot of headlines around how, supply chain digital, you need to be digital in your supply chain. What does that mean, and how are we going to achieve it? But they still think they have limitations, the talent war, do they have the right people? And the people they have, they may have been there for 20 plus years. They may rely on tribal knowledge, and they love their spreadsheets, and they love the status quo. So I think we do have to sell a vision that's compelling, that does allow transformation, but does move the current existing community further. And typically good people armed with better information can make better decisions without an extensive change management process. But you still need to build a multi-year plan, which involves moving decision rights from individual departments to maybe a business analyst that combines data from different areas, and then just taking the executive point of view on how this SKU in this situation, how this product should be positioned. Is it a service level? Is it a cost optimization model? And so marrying these two worlds between status quo practitioners armed with better information and using highly visual graphics and analytics to make better decisions, to this autonomous world that lies ahead of us, where the current decision maker will be, or the future decision maker will have a lot more information at their fingertips.
So can you boil that down? What 3 pieces of advice would you say supply chain leaders should act on now?
Well, have a clarity of vision where they want to be in 3 years, not 5 years out. So clarity of vision. Secondly, understand where they are and pick a partner of choice that can not only implement technology, but understands people, process, technology, and data, and has some value in data aggregation and turning data into actionable intelligence. And then thirdly, taking appropriate steps, but like in 6-month increments. So implementing best practice or getting to a better place, but also leaving the door open to fulfill that longer term vision.
Well, leadership and vision are easy to say, but, the proof's in the pudding. Is there any case study or company that you think are doing it well? And you don't have to necessarily name them, but I'm looking for examples of where you think a leader has done that well.
Well, I'm thinking of a large manufacturing durables good manufacturer in the Midwest that recently departed from the mothership, and they were divested of in a separate unit. And in a period of time, based on their service level agreement, they had to make some clear decisions on their future, and they still had to understand their resource constraints. A year later, no one had the same job, and they couldn't rely on the same systems. So what we decided together was where they wanted to be autonomous and self-reliant in the future, but they looked to us to bring in planning as a service. So we put our embedded experts both on-site and virtually in order to define the project, but then deliver a result, which ultimately was planning as a service in a multi-echelon inventory optimization situation, where instead of doing user acceptance and user training, we came in with a highly prescriptive playbook and said, look, here's the outcome you want. We're intimate with you. You've been a customer for a while. Let's help you get off of these other systems and move there over time. But first step is to do planning as a service where we're carrying a lot of the load. So Laura, was a good combination of using our in the cloud platform and the analytics to drive decisions, but we were also helping them just come to an answer. What is my safety stock and what is my inventory requirements in these different locations, coming up with an answer without having gone through a lot of change management on their side.
So, Mack, when you say planning as a service, you have Logility talent that's running the optimization? I'm just looking for clarity.
Yes, that's right. I mean, we basically take data from the customer and we give them the answer. So we are adjunct members of their team, and it's really focused on the outcome. And so rather than training 12 or 24 users, we are the providers of the answers that feed their key decision-making process.
And I love that solution because I find that with baby boomers retiring, mergers and acquisitions, people moving, a lot of times systems were implemented, but the people at the wheel, so to speak, had lost touch with how to run the systems. How many people or companies are you doing service-oriented delivery for?
It's only a handful today. There's a lot more considering it. And when people look at, the aggregation of companies, sometimes globally, and the lack of talent, and then they have a consulting firm giving them good advice on structural changes and change management, they're looking at sometimes a multi-year horizon just to get their process, people, and organizations in place. And so now people are saying, there's a different alternative. Let's go straight to the answer and the outcome, and then the organization will follow. So we're thinking that we sort of understood this as an opportunity, Laura, but it was really the market that was driving towards how do we solve for, with our best information technology partner, a lack of talent, a lack of time, and a little bit of resistance to change. Can you come in with a prescriptive measure and help us get there faster?
I remember when I was an AMR analyst and I first met the team from Optiant, and it was pretty scary. They were smart people, and the analysis of form and function of inventory was before I think the industry was ready. And Logility bought Optiant, and it's still one of the strongest inventory optimization technologies in the market. And companies are saying, I really want to do what-if analysis. So I'm really glad to hear you offer it as a service offering, because a lot of my clients just struggle with talent. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up today?
Well, I would just say that the proliferation of data and the pressure on businesses to make changes, whether it's crisis management given a pandemic or a recessionary situation that's very disruptive, or crisis prevention, having early warning signs early. There's so much pressure on companies to be resilient and act with speed that this whole Agile methodology is something that is really changing. So we have this combination, Laura, of solving for what's the best practice we can implement quickly, but also how do we do an innovation around the edges, look at new data sources, new business models, and kind of operate at both this sort of traditional evolutionary step that the organization can digest that change and feel confident, but also how do we build for that transformation. So I think that's where we're going to see in the next year, there'll be fewer new project starts, but there'll also be a higher perceived need because the supply chains become top of mind to all the executives. If they didn't understand supply chain 6 months ago, Laura, they've been schooled on the constraints and factors. But I do think this idea of outsourcing more and looking for a prescriptive model is going to be in fashion. And that's where we're going to want to come in and with pre-built analytics solve for one of these 20 different scenarios, these multiple KPIs, and build confidence within the structure that we're serving. That means the super user, the line of business leader, the IT department, sometimes the service consulting fraternity that's also engaged, but ultimately gives the CEO and his or her, direct reports the ability to kind of have control over their supply chain in service of their customers and markets. So we're calling it the CEO-driven supply chain, and thinking that now companies have said we're mature on ERP. How can we use decision support and automate as much as possible to get to the resilient enterprise we want to be?
Well, I'm doing some research, Mack, on COVID-19 response and, kind of the boardroom discussion. And it's interesting because I'm finding people are more collaborative, and we're living in a case study where we're redefining supply chain to not just be functional, but, it matters because, we're experiencing it in a different way. And I'm being asked a lot of questions around the autonomous supply chain. And I think, and I just wrote an article, AI that, not so fast, because I think that we're not clear quite yet on how to use these new forms of technologies to really drive autonomous supply chains. But what is your thought? How far away are we from the no-touch planning process?
I think we're 5 to 7 years away, and there are certain functions like replenishment that should be automated, and that's current technology, current best practice. But we believe more in augmentation of the intelligent person in the middle, and we do believe, in acceleration of decision making by having a bigger aperture of information available, coupled with execution. So plan and execution systems will merge. And we think we really go for the early majority pragmatist. If you look at the, crossing the chasm and market segmentation, our marketplace, they're like, we love autonomous as a vision, and we believe in autonomous cars will happen before we know it. But let's be real about what we can achieve in 3 years, and then we can talk about the future after that. So we don't like to push the autonomous message because we think it's a little bit premature. We think it's a little bit more in the hype cycle. And if you're a challenger and you don't have 1,000 customers, you're probably going to play to the futurists. But for us, Laura, we really just want to deliver a result in a very predictable fashion. But we do think the augmentation that we can provide will change the decision rights. And one person will soon have the power of 5. But we still think that person is going to play a critical role near term. Are you in agreement with that, Laura, or do you think the autonomous supply chain is just on the near-term horizon?
No, I think 5 to 7 is an alignment with my thinking. I think that we're going to first move from inside out to outside in and redefine demand management based upon sensing and translation using market signals, just not order patterns. And I think we're going to get much deeper around form and function of inventory and how we set the push-pull decoupling points and the inventory strategies, and the translation of manufacturing and procurement into networks. And I know that you've worked a lot with logistics and networks, but that redefinition of planning and then the connection to execution, I think we need to redefine that overlay, because what we have pushed forward in the market really was defined in 1980s and 1990s. And we kind of lost speed when we focused on tight integration to ERP and, really kind of stilted the development of the planning. And 80% of people, because the solutions were so hard, defaulted to spreadsheets. And now in my interviews, those that are dependent on spreadsheets and tight integration to ERP are struggling because they don't have the depth, the optimization, the what-if analysis, the visualization. So I think now's the time to start to define what those processes are. And over time, I'm hoping that companies like you help clients to build that vision.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do think ERP captured the imagination of CFOs and CEOs, felt it was their fiduciary responsibility to sometimes spend billions, and supply chain was often the poor cousin. But if you think about the opportunity for servicing your customer or managing your cash, by managing your inventory and your channels, would have been a much better spend. So I don't know what happened, 20 years ago to give ERP the dominant focus of certainly American and some European companies. But I do think we're now going to see the era ahead of us is really around creating operating systems where people can make decisions based on what happened this morning, understand the optimization, the calculations, the trade-offs, very visual, build a consensual point of view that's real time off the same data model, and then test it out, and then be able to measure that and come back next week or next month and say, how do we do? And then learn from that using machine learning, where the human mind is no longer our capacity constraint. It's now more infinite. But we still need to have the intelligent supply chain operators really make the decisions, but supported by great analytics that's highly visual to do the what-if simulations. So yeah, we think we're at the beginning of another boom period, Laura, and we echo your sentiment that, man, we could really make companies a lot more competitive, a lot more cost efficient, a lot more responsive to market. And many of those companies that are doing well today that are on our platform are very thankful. And then those that are evaluating and saying, God, I wish I had a system a year ago.
Well, and I love the fact that you're offering service to help people to, make the transition. I just find people are so short right now in talent that understand planning. Well, Mac, I know you're in Spain, and I'm hoping that you have safe travels back to the States and that you can navigate the shutdowns. Anything you'd like to say before you close? I appreciate having you on the show today.
No, thank you very much. We are eager to think about our business model differently and move more. Ultimately, we think a company like us will be offering services on a technology that's resilient, but be paid based on outcomes. I mean, that's our future. And so now we're eating our own dog food, Laura. When we provide a service to a customer, we have our embedded experts going through the whole implementation process, and that's actually helping us with an agile development, because we're no longer waiting for a protracted customer feedback. We're doing like real-time feedback, because now we're not only developers of the platform, but we're actually real-time users of the platform. So it's kind of a cool turn of events that's put us in the driver's seat in a lot of these big implementation cycles, and we're having fun. So Laura, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this podcast today, and I'm looking forward to more conversations in the future.
Same. All the best. Until next time, Mac.